morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good to see everyone here this morning. I'm not Pastor John, if you noticed. Pastor John is a little bit under the weather this morning, so he decided to stay home just to be safe. So, Stephen, where you at, Stephen? There you are. He'll be bringing a message for us later on in the service. We welcome you here. We thank you that you joined us this morning. We're going to start our time of worship here by looking at Psalms 100. If you have your Bible, you can look at it with me. Psalms 100. It says, "Let the whole earth shout triumphantly to God. Serve the Lord with gladness. Come before him with joyful songs. Acknowledge that the Lord is God. He made us, and we are his people, the sheep of his pasture. Enter his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. Give thanks to him and bless his name. For the Lord is good, and his faithful love endures forever. His faithfulness through all generations." Amen.
Amen.
This is a song of thankfulness. And so this morning, as we start, I just want to have a time of quiet prayer. Just bow your heads where you are, and we'll just be silent and just think about all the things, even though it seems sometimes that our world is blowing up around us and we don't know what's going on. We serve a God that does know what's going on. He is sovereign. And so we just pray this morning that he opens our eyes to him and to his sovereignty, and just be thankful to him. So let's take that time, just a little bit of time here. Father God, we just come before you this morning, thanking you for your mercy, your grace, and your love that you pour out on us. Thank you for your Son, Jesus Christ, that died for our sins. Thank you for just everything that you've done for us. We ask this morning, God, that you open our eyes to you, that we see you, that we see what you've done for us and how you love us. I pray, God, that you would open us to your sovereignty. Like I say, sometimes this world seems like it's just going crazy around us. We know you are sovereign. And thank you for that. We pray all these things this morning. In Jesus' name, amen. Stand with us this morning. We're going to sing "Open the Eyes of My Heart."
Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. See you high and lifted up, shining in the light of your glory. Pour out your power and love as we sing, holy, holy, holy. See you high and lifted up, shining in the light of your glory. Pour out your power and love as we sing, holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. I want to see you. Holy, 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 holy. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. I want to see you. Have different voices. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. I want to see you. Amen. Praise the Lord this morning. These words. There is strength within the sorrow. There is beauty in our tears. And you meet us in our mourning with a love that casts out fear. Join me. You are working in our waiting, sanctifying us with beyond our understanding. You are teaching us to trust. Your plans are still to prosper. You've not forgotten us. You're with us in the fire and the flood. Faithful forever, perfect in love. You are sovereign over us. You are wisdom unimagined.
morning. Father God, again, we just come before you thanking you for who you are and what you do for us each and every day. God, as Stephen comes this morning to give the message that you've laid on his heart, I pray that you just give him the words to say, help him to speak your word in truth and spirit. And in all these things we pray. In your name. Amen.
Take the mask off while I preach so it's not quite as muffled. Morning.
Good morning.
So I think he's gotten his results, but Pastor John had to be tested. So he got his results and he's good. Negative? Yeah. This is what we want negative? Yes. He called me up on Thursday and he asked me if I'd be willing to preach for him this weekend because he had just gotten tested that day. They're telling us when you get tested, they're saying anywhere from 48 to 72 hours before we get results, and they may not give you results on the weekend, and so he didn't know if he even had his results by today, whether he felt well or not. And I told him it was sort of good news, bad news. I was more than willing to preach, but at the time I was actually awaiting my test results too. So it wasn't until, 10 o'clock Friday night that I got mine cleared as negative as well, and so we knew I was actually going to preach. So I don't know who was on deck after me, but somebody got passed. So I feel like that's kind of been 2020, hasn't it? Like we're just waiting for the next shoe to fall, you know?
Amen.
It's every week brings a new horrible disaster. There's a global pandemic. There's an incredibly divisive political election coming. There were killer bees. I don't know. I haven't seen anything about that. Maybe we decided that wasn't important anymore. There were killer bees. There's some super volcano in Yosemite. There's just a litany of disasters right now. It seems like this swirling kind of storm of catastrophe, and it's hitting all of us in some way. If nothing else, we know it's hit us with the economy. Some of us don't have jobs right now. Some of us haven't had jobs in months. Actually, I still have my job. I was in a gas station the other day in my uniform, and a guy offered to hold the door for me as I was coming in and out, and he told me that he'd been off work since March, so I was working harder than him, and he could hold the door for me. And I thought, I appreciate that, but I'll bet you'd rather be at work than holding the door. And that's kind of where we've been. This whole thing, 2020, has hit all of us to a greater or lesser degree. And I feel like the longer this thing goes, the greater that degree is going to be for all of us. The storm is going to come home to roost. I don't know how many of you guys know someone who was personally tested positive. My parents actually tested negative this past week as well. They got the results on the 4th of July, so independence for them in a couple of ways. And they're at home actually watching my kids because they tested negative and I tested negative, so they could watch the kids and I could come and be here while Ashley's in the pharmacy working with people who probably have tested positive. That's our lives. And so when I was thinking about what to preach about this morning, it brings up this age-old question. The where is God when it hurts question. If God is all-knowing, and is all-powerful, and is all-loving, then why is all of this happening? Why is there a global pandemic? Why are millions of people infected and hundreds of thousands of people dead, and it's still going? Why has the economy around the world been tanked? Why are Christian missionaries who've devoted their lives to serving God and going out into new places to bring the word of Christ, why are they being hit? Because their supporting churches have run out of money too, and so they're running out of money. Maybe they had to leave the country because of COVID, and they can't get back. Maybe they got stuck in that country because they didn't leave when they could, and now they can't. Why is all this happening? Where is God when it there are two sides to that question. You know, that side of, if God is all-knowing and all-loving and all-powerful, why does he let these things happen? Or we could look at it a little more personally, maybe a little more, for lack of a better phrase, Old Testament, and say, well, what have I done then? If all of these things are happening, if all of this is going wrong in my life, what have I done wrong? Lord, just show me the sin in my life, and I'll repent, and we'll get that fixed, and then all this can go away. Is this punishment? These are the two sides we look at. Either I seem to be unfairly targeted, or I'm being punished for something. So the text I want to look at today, I think will help us work through those questions. I don't know that they're going to give us answers, because I think to a certain degree some of these answers are pretty personal. But I think it'll help us to look through it. So we're going to begin in Matthew. One of the joys of getting to do pulpit supply is I get to sometimes ignore the order of sermons. So Pastor John would have been still in Acts. I'm going to jump back to Matthew. Matthew chapter 14, starting in verse 22. And this is Jesus walking on water. So I'm going to read it out for you, and then we'll talk into it too. So immediately Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side, while he dismissed the crowd. After he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. Later that night he was there alone, and the boat was already a considerable distance from the land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and they cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage. It's just me. Don't be afraid." "Lord, if it's you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You of little faith," he said, "why did you doubt?" And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly you are the Son of God." So I think there are three things we can look at here. I want to look at, why are the disciples in the storm to begin with? I want to look at where Jesus is while they're in the storm. And then I want to look at what the point of the storm was. And I think all of this can help us work through those questions of, where is God right now? So why are the disciples in the storm? This is actually an interesting question to me. Because remember, most of our disciples were fishermen, experienced fishermen, from lines of generations of fishermen. They know this lake. They know boats. They know the weather. Surely they could have looked up at any point during the day before, seen the clouds, and known a storm is possible. At the very least, when they're out there on the water, because it says that they went out on the water at dusk, and they still haven't arrived on the other side by morning when Jesus comes along. So at some point, they knew a storm is coming. Before it hit, they felt the wind pick up. They saw the rain coming. They maybe saw the flashes of lightning in the distance. Before the storm fully hit them, they knew there was a storm coming, and it will be against us. So why are they there? We rag on the disciples a lot in the Gospels. They do a lot of stupid things. They do things like, the people reject Jesus and they say, "Jesus, let's call down fire and destroy them." The people come to arrest Jesus in the garden, and Peter cuts off the servant's ear. He's going to fight. They do some foolish things because they don't understand the kingdom of God. But I think here, they actually get it right. Because I think the reason they're in the storm is because Jesus told them to get in the boat and go to the other side of the lake. this story is told in two other Gospels as well, in Mark and in John, both of which are chapter 6, if you want to read those accounts later. And in one of those accounts, it says that they're actually rowing the boat against the storm. So the wind is against them. They've taken down the sails because then it would just be blowing them back the other way. They've pulled out the oars and they're fighting for all their worth to keep moving forward because Jesus said, get in the boat, go to the other side of the lake. This one instance, at least, they really get it right. And it's interesting because they're not in the storm because they did something wrong. They're not in the storm to punish them for their sins. They're not in the storm even because of just foolishness or stupidity, because they just couldn't read the weather, didn't see a storm coming. They're in the middle of the storm, fighting for all their worth to gain any additional inch, because Jesus told them, get in the boat and go to the other side. Life is difficult, and it has even more difficult times. And sometimes all we can do in those times is cling to the last thing we know God told us to do. Do you guys know that Ashley and I have moved around over the years with pharmacy school and with ministries and things like that? And we've had a lot of difficult times in those moves. Family that didn't want us to go further away than we already were. We've had ministries that frankly didn't do that well. We've had times that we've been let go from ministries even because we didn't see eye to eye necessarily with the people in leadership. We've had other issues. Ashley and I have, some of you know this, we've lost 3 children to miscarriages along the way. And we've asked those questions, God, why is this happening? Aren't I a good person? Aren't I a Christian? Didn't we give our lives to you and follow you in ministry? Haven't we been trying all of this time to serve you better? Why did we just lose another child? Wouldn't we give a great home to those children? Wouldn't they be raised in Christ? God, why can't we have them? These questions are normal and natural. At least before COVID, we could even say, God, I go to church every week. That's a little harder to say now, but we could do these things. We could say, God, aren't I a good person? Why is this happening? And every time what Ashley and I had to fall back on was the last thing we knew for sure that the Lord had told us to do. And say, okay, we're going to keep going forward. Because it's not just the disciples here who saw the storm coming and continued to go. Jesus knew there was a storm coming. He's God. He knew that this was going to go poorly for the disciples. I don't know if beforehand he kind of took a look in the boat and was like, all right, there are 12 oars or 12, all right, you guys will be fine. Like, he knew the storm was going to come. The text tells us that he dismisses the crowd, and this is the crowd of the 5,000 who fed off the little boy's lunch kind of thing. So it's a huge crowd. He dismisses them. He climbs a mountain that overlooks the water. One of the other accounts, one of the other Gospels says that while he's up on the mountain praying, he looks out over the lake and he sees the disciples in the storm. He knew a storm was coming too. Even if the disciples were completely unaware that they were going to hit this storm, Jesus knew, and he sent them into it anyway. And he could have said, hey, if things get rough, you know what, just turn around and come back. Or he could have said, you know, tonight's going to be a really rough night. Why don't you guys dismiss the crowd? I'll go up on this mountain to pray, and I'll come back down in the morning, and we'll go across tomorrow morning, and everything's calm. He could have done those things. It wouldn't have even changed much when they arrived. But he said, no, get in the boat, go to the other side. He sent them into that storm. Sometimes that's what God does. And what we do in those times is we cling to the last thing we know for sure God told us to do. And we keep rowing forward. this storm. We talked about he's up there on the mountainside, and he looks down and he sees them. The text tells us that he starts walking to them across the lake, walking on the water. I think sometimes we get a little, I don't know, inured to this. Like we've heard this story, you know, and it's cool, walking on water, and we sing songs about it, and, you know, Lord, call me out on the waves with you. You know, we talk about it. This really is amazing. This is something that has never been done. This is the kind of thing Jesus does. He takes miracles that God has done in the past, and he says, look, I'm God in the flesh, and what you've seen before is nothing compared to what I can still do. Various times in the Old Testament, God split waters so that people could cross on dry land, whether it was a whole nation or just a couple of people. He's done that. That's old. He told them all to shut down. They do. So we've seen that happen. But here he does something totally new. He just comes out walking along the water to them, like he's out for a little Sunday stroll. And I think it's interesting. One of the other passages of this talks about he's going to just walk on past the boat. He's not even walking to the disciples. He told them to go to the other side. They're working on that. He's going to the other side. He's going to walk on past. The storm has no effect on Jesus at all. Gravity, in this case, has no effect on Jesus at all. This is why we cling to that last known thing we know that God told us, because the only safety in the storm is the one who is outside of the storm, is the one who can't be affected by the storm. That's our only safe place. It's our only safe harbor. And so when Jesus comes walking out on the water, and he's going to walk past them, the disciples see him and they think it's a ghost. And that's totally understandable. Visibility is nil. The wind is coming over like crazy. The rain is pouring down. There's flashes of lightning. They are tired. They've been struggling against the oars. And the last thing you would reasonably expect to see is somebody walking along the water. And so it's totally reasonable when you see that to think it's a ghost. Or to think the opposite. Maybe we've all died in the storm. We're ghosts. They don't even recognize Jesus at first. Same thing happens to us too. When we're in these various storms of our lives, how often do we miss Jesus? At least the first time. Do we think that there's no way that can be Jesus? There's no way. It's impossible for that to be Jesus. He wouldn't be in this storm. He wouldn't be walking alongside me. He wouldn't come to give me any way out. It's impossible. And we miss it. And we keep struggling against the oars and all of our human strength to try to get through things. They freak out and Jesus says, it's okay, guys, it's me. It's me. You know me. You know what I can do. You know my power. You don't have to be afraid. Not just of the ghost that you think I am. You don't have to be afraid, period. You don't have to be afraid of the storm, the wind, the waves, none of it. Take courage. It's I. Don't be afraid. And this is another time when the disciples get it right. This is actually one of the reasons I like this story. The disciples get it right a lot in this story. So often we talk about they get it wrong, but here they get it right so much. And Peter doesn't say, Lord, if it's you, stop the storm. If it's you, calm the waves. Lord, if it's you, just get us out of this situation. Lord, if it's you, tell us that we can just go back the other way. We don't have to keep fighting against the storm. He doesn't say any of those things. He says, Lord, if it's you, I want to come to you. I think it's because Peter recognizes what we just said. The only safe place in the storm is with the one who is not affected by it. It wasn't enough please calm the wind and the waves and let everything be normal again. For Peter in that moment, the storm no longer mattered. All that mattered was being with Jesus. And Jesus says, come. And he says that to us in our storms too. He doesn't say, I'm going to get you out of this. Don't worry about it. He says, come to me. Come to me. It's interesting, in Acts, when the church starts to really be pummeled with persecution, and they gather together to pray, they don't pray, Lord, stop the persecution. Lord, keep us safe. They pray, Lord, may we be bold to continue speaking your name no matter what the cost. Lord, if it's you, call me out to you. Peter steps out on the water, and he starts walking to Jesus. And for a moment, a minute, a few minutes, we don't know, he's doing it. He's walking on the water. And we know it's not because Peter's amazing, but because Jesus is. And as long as his sole focus is on Jesus, the storm doesn't matter anymore. It's still there. It hasn't gone away. But it doesn't matter anymore. I wonder, and I don't know, this is just me kind of reading into the text, but I wonder if Peter even knew that he was off the boat. If the water felt so solid beneath his feet, he didn't even know that he left the boat entirely. His focus was entirely on Jesus. And as soon as that changes, as soon as he sees the wind and the waves and says, this can't be happening, he starts to sink. Some of you guys know, when I was 19, I was in a job-related accident. It was a flash fire or explosion, however you want to term it. And I was burned really, really badly. And one of the cool things about how God has sort of designed us, or so I've been told by people with more medical knowledge than I have. I'm married a person with medical knowledge. That means I don't have to have it myself. What I've been told is that when you get, when your nervous system gets inundated by stimuli, that it can basically shut down. That it kind of, goes all the spinal column, starts heading up to the brain, and there's a little switch back here, basically it can just overload and shut down, like blowing a fuse in your house. And when I was in this accident, I was burned very badly. I had severe second-degree burns over 10% of my body. I ended up spending a few days in the hospital and all sorts of other things, but when it initially happened, I didn't know I was hurt. I knew, obviously, that I had been surrounded by fire. I knew that the blast had carried me much further than my jump could have. I knew that I was injured, but I didn't feel any pain. It hadn't gotten up to my brain all the way. And the guys I was working with at this job site, they were brand new to the job site. It was a summer camp. I'd already been there for a couple of weeks. And so they obviously, they could see me, they could see how badly I was hurt, but they didn't know where to take me. We were out in the middle of the forest at this park. They didn't know where to take me because they were brand new to this place. And so I had to give them instructions. I had to give them directions about how to get to the camp store where the nearest phone was so that they could call to the main office where the nearest phone with an outside line was so that they could call the ambulance. This is in fact Jesus, that they invite him onto the boat. And that as soon as he gets on the boat, the storm ends. And suddenly they've arrived at their destination. They've been working all night long to get to the other side of the lake, trying to get there, haven't been able to get there. As soon as Jesus gets in the boat with them, the storm is over, and they've made it. I think this is where we get to the purpose of the storm. And it's right here in verse 33. Then those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, truly, you are the Son of God. Sometimes we are blessed enough to recognize deity of Christ in normal times. But a lot of the time, we don't recognize how amazing Christ is unless things are going badly. It's almost like we need the negative image in order to see the positive image. Sometimes God sends us into the storms, knowing full well that we are going into a storm. And it's not because he doesn't love us. It's not because he doesn't want to take care of us. It's because sometimes the storm is how we can see God. How we can recognize truly you are the Son of God. We talk so often about where is God when it hurts. And sometimes it's because we get hurt a little bit. You guys know I'm a big Batman fan. This is the line from Batman Begins, Why do we fall, Bruce? So that we can learn to pick ourselves back up. Why do we go into storms? Sometimes it's so that we can learn to let God pick us back up. We have to learn to depend upon Christ over and above anything else. I don't depend upon my job and my paycheck to provide for my family. Because that, as we have seen, can be taken away in an instant through something outside of my control. I don't depend upon my own health, because that, as we've seen, can be taken away in an instant through something completely outside of my own control. I can't depend on any of those things. I can't depend upon my ability as a fisherman who was raised on the boats on the water to make it through this storm. On my own health, because that, as we've seen, can be taken away in an instant through something completely outside of my own control. I can't depend on any of those things. I can't depend upon my ability as a fisherman who was raised on the boats on the water to make it through this storm. I have to learn to depend upon Christ. I have to learn to see nothing else but Christ. Sometimes that's the purpose of the storm. So the sermon's going to end, and we're all going to leave here, and those of you online will sign off, and we'll go back into a world that is still in the midst of a storm that nobody has seen in generations. Economic, political, health, every aspect of our lives, everything we thought we could depend on is going away or is being damaged. And all that still exists outside these walls. And I want to submit to you that we're not in the storm as a whole, not as a punishment. And we're not in the storm because God doesn't love us. But that maybe we're here because God wants us to see only Him. Sometimes the only way we can do that is when everything else has been stripped away. So I hope that we will respond the same way. Truly, you are the Son of God. As we wrap this up, there's one little thing I wanted to point out, and I mentioned it earlier. They invited Jesus onto the boat. Remember, Jesus was going to walk on past. He doesn't get on the boat until they invite him on. He doesn't come into our lives until we invite him in. He sees us in the storm. He cares for us in the storm. He loves us in the storm. And he is there to be our anchor point of safety when we're in the midst of it all. But we have to invite him in. We have to ask him for it. Let's pray. Lord, it sounds weird. We thank you for the storm, for the difficulties, for the loss, for everything that leaves us with nothing but you. Because that shows us that all we need is you. And Father, I know that we will forget those things, and I know that we will trust in other things again, maybe even 10 minutes from now. But Lord, I pray that we'll have more and more moments like Peter, that we will say, God, if it's you, call me to you. And that for those moments, however long they are, all that will matter is you. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Stand with us as we close with this song. If you do need to come to the altar this morning, there's plenty of room up here to do that. Still social distance. You'll let to do that. Otherwise, just sit at your seat or pray at your seat or whatever you need to do.
Light of the world, you step down into darkness. Open my eyes, let me see beauty that made this heart adore you. Hope of a life spent with you. And here I am to worship, here I am to bow down, here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. King of all days, so highly exalted, glorious in heaven above. Humbly you came to the earth you created, all for the sake he came for. And here I am to worship, here I am to bow down, here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. I'll never know how much it costs to see my sin upon that cross. I'll never know how much it costs to see my sin upon that cross. And here I am to worship, here I am to bow down, here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. And here I am to worship, here I am to bow down, here I am to say that you're my God. Amen. Say amen this morning.
Amen.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you again for joining us. In just a minute, Randy, I'm going to ask you to pray to close. I got a few announcements just to leave you with. As you're leaving this morning, please try to socially distance. We'll start from the back and work our way out that way. Also
Also, there's offering plates in the back if you want to lay your offering in that, or you can go to the website, fpjasper.org. There's a spot on there you can go to and give online if you haven't been doing that, if you want to. You want to remember next Saturday, I still think this on, next Saturday, July 18th, the Busics will be moving, and we would like to get as much help as we can. They've got a trailer already, I think, lined up, and so if you can be over there about 8 o'clock, if you have questions about where their address or any of that, contact me or Pastor John, and we can get you that information. But I think it's around 8 o'clock is when they're planning on starting that. I don't know how many of you know Todd Clark. Todd's been coming to church the last year or so with Valerie Gagnon, is a friend of hers, but Todd was taken to the hospital last night, very serious condition, late last night, and I haven't heard how he's faring, but please keep him in your prayers as he goes through that. And also, if you have any prayer requests, again, on the website, there's a spot on there you can go on, and we'll get that on the prayer chain and get it out to those. If you want to be a part of the prayer chain, you can also go on there and sign up for that. And lastly, Wednesday night, we'll still plan on 6:30. We didn't do it this past week because Pastor was under the weather, but we'll go ahead and do it at 6:30 for this coming Wednesday for Bible study, and the youth will be outside if it's not too hot. So we'll plan on that. If something happens, we'll let everyone know if that changes. Okay, is there anything else that I'm missing? Okay. Again, thank you so much for joining us this morning and worshiping with us. Thank you, Stephen, for the word that you shared with us. It's just amazing how God works the songs and the sermon and everything together. And you pick songs out a week ahead of time and everything, and it just always works together. So we just praise God for that. It's awesome. So Randy, if you would close us, and then we'll dismiss.
So Father, we give thanks this morning that we can come together and we can remember your word. We thank you, Father, for the promises that you give us. We thank you, Lord, that we're never without hope. And we were shown this morning. We thank you, Father, that we need to keep our eyes on you and trust. I pray, Father, this morning, especially for Pastor, that you would help him to regain strength, that he would know that he's missed and he's loved. I thank you, Father, for the efforts in our music and the way that we all have opportunity to rejoice